Okay. So, you've heard me talk about 40k before.
Yeah.
Do you know how I talk about the Adeptus Mechanicus? Do you recall that name at least?
Vaguely.
Okay. This is my favorite, like, group in the story, but I mainly like them just because they're actually a lot like me. So, what do I constantly talk about on a daily basis, almost?
Random shit? I don't know.
Okay, what do I constantly ask your permission for once it becomes better?
Games?
No.
I don't know.
Okay. How many times a week do I ask you if I can replace my body parts with robot limbs?
Oh, God. All the time?
Yes.
Then it's become annoying.
Yes. Basically, for them, it's full-on religion.
That's weird.
Yeah, well, it's 38,000 years in the future.
Still weird.
Well, yeah. And then, what was the one thing I constantly asked for one of our wedding gifts?
Ooh,
The thing I got excited about the most that we most recently bought.
the toaster?
Yes, the toaster.
Okay.
It is
what does that have to do with anything?
Because they're obsessed with technology.
Okay.
So it's a meme that they fuck toasters.
And this is what we're going to talk about.
Yes, this is what we're going to talk about. Not them
Wonderful.
fucking toasters, but...
Sometimes I wonder about you.
Okay. So basically, also they live on Mars. That's another thing.
Is this the reason you constantly ask me to move to Mars?
No, I just like the concept of it.
Convenient.
Yes. But love technology, love toasters, and love Mars. So I have a lot in common with these people.
As long as you don't say you want to fuck a toaster, we're good.
I will never fuck a toaster.
Please don't.
Yeah. Too steamy, too spicy.
Ew.
So basically, how it started off was... I'm trying to figure out the right way to explain this. There was something called the Dark Age of Technology. And that was basically...
That sounds familiar.
Yes. And basically what that is you can also call it like the Golden Age of Technology. And basically it was any science fiction movie that you've seen where it's like, oh, people are in space. It's all like one big group and all that. That's basically what it was.
Okay.
For instance, people were so advanced that one of their guns basically will take a ship from the future and take it back in time like 2 seconds on top of the previous ship, and it just instantly explodes.
Okay.
And there are grenades that are just, hey, it's a grenade, throw it, black hole. That's how advanced the people were.
Okay.
So anyways, like in any science fiction movie or show, they invent AI, they rebel. Society...
Which is why I don't know why everybody wants AI, but continue.
AI will be the greatest thing ever.
Until it kills us all.
It won't. People watch too much Terminator.
And yet every AI-related movie or AI-related topic, they're always like, yeah, there's potential to kill us, but we're still going to work on it.
Okay, for instance, we want to have a kid. That's the same thought of like, oh, hey, we're having a kid. I can't wait for it to murder me. That's basically the same logic you got to go into it with. It's like, oh, we have a dog. I can't wait for it to eat me in my sleep. No one has that concept about anything else, but as soon as it's a robot, it's like, oh, it'll fucking kill me.
But it's even the scientists that are making it that talk about it.
People also thought when the atomic bomb was first invented that it just going off would cause a chain reaction throughout the universe.
Yes, it's just the fear of the unknown.
Nah.
That's
Fuck it. I want robots. I want robots. I want robot limbs. Also...
You're not getting robot limbs.
Also, their main color is red, which is my favorite color.
You're still not getting robot limbs.
I'm getting robot limbs.
No.
Yes, I am. Anyways, back on topic. So basically, robots rebel. And then, right after that is finished, there's a race called the Eldar, which, think of them as like elves from Lord of the Rings, is the best way I can describe it to you.
Okay.
But they're in space.
Space elves.
Yes, space elves,
Okay.
basically. So, they accidentally create this thing called a chaos god.
How do they accidentally create a chaos god?
I will explain this to you later.
Okay.
But it involves a lot of murder and raping.
Okay.
Not necessarily in that order.
Okay.
Anyways. So basically, create this chaos god, and there's this thing called the warp. And it's
I remember the warp.
Okay, yes, you've heard me talk about that before.
Yeah,
so
almost every time you talk about this, the warp is involved.
Yes. So there's the normal world and then the warp. If you want to travel faster than light, you got to go through the warp for some races. For different races, there's a different way, but I'll explain that later.
Okay.
Just because it'll get too confusing otherwise.
Okay.
So they create a fourth chaos god in the warp. That causes the warp to be basically unusable. So all of the human planets outside the galaxy and all that, basically think of it like right now if cars just stopped working. And it's like, okay, now we got to keep all the countries working together now with no form of travel.
Okay.
So basically everything fell apart. Mars and Earth were the planets that fell apart.
Okay.
During this whole like conflict, and obviously people go crazy, so instantly start murdering each other and everything.
Fun times.
Everything's post-apocalyptic because it's after a civil war with robots, and after now, hey, we can rebuild, and nope, everything's falling apart now.
Okay.
So basic war on Mars now. People killing each other, lots of just basically explosions and everything like that. And since they're no longer receiving like food and other materials from all these other planets, basically society crumbles apart, and over the course of several thousands of years, the main group that comes out is known as like the Priesthood of Mars.
Wait, hold on. Question.
Yes.
So essentially, they spread themselves out too thin, relied on other planets they could no longer come into contact to.
Yes. It wasn't really spreading themselves out too thin, though. It was more or less of just all the infrastructure just fell apart. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, all the infrastructure falls apart. For instance, remember Star Wars and Coruscant? The entire planet that's a city? Yes. Basically, Earth and somewhat Mars are kind of like that.
Okay.
Earth, no oceans, nothing else, just entire city of a planet.
Oh,
basically.
So basically they've screwed up Earth more than it's already screwed up.
Yes.
Wonderful.
And planets like that are known as Hive Worlds.
Okay.
Because literally cities are so big and so tall that they're the size of like mountains.
Oh, jeez.
And this is on like a planet-wide scale instead of just like a hive city scale.
Okay.
Mars is essentially a giant forge world.
Okay.
And basically it's an entire planet that does nothing but build shit.
Okay.
So, like how you see on like YouTube and stuff, like the forge assembly plants and like assembly lines, it's an entire planet that's just that.
Okay.
And basically, after a whole bunch of years, the Priesthood of Mars, now known as like the Mechanicum, takes over Mars, and they start sending people out to space and stuff, being like, hey, find these things called STCs. Basically, STC stands for Standard Template Construct, which is basically all of human knowledge in this device, and it basically works as like a giant 3D printer.
Okay.
Where it's basically like, hey, you want to build a tank? Okay, just press the button and it'll build a tank. You just gotta feed it the materials.
Okay.
So far, there's no fully intact STC that holds all the information. You just get like little fragments of them.
So they're basically trying to put it all back together?
Yes.
Okay.
Because in the world of 40k, you don't invent things. No one believes... The Mechanicum doesn't believe in inventing things. Its religion is basically like, hey... all the technology already exists. We just have to go out and find it.
So they basically don't think you can improve upon anything anymore?
There are some that are like, oh no, we can improve upon it. We can, like, fix things that
You can't make anything new.
Yes. For all intents and purposes, yes, if you're, like, really by the book with how their religion is. There's a few people that, like, obviously go outside of that, and it's like, oh, I want to build something. Obviously, building AI is like one of the worst things ever. And in the world of 40k, AI does not stand for artificial intelligence. It stands for abominable intelligence. Because obviously the Civil War, everyone's really pissed about AI.
Yeah.
Which comes in with servitors, which are just basically lobotomized people. And just basically like, hey, your job is just to flip this switch.
Lobotomies are horrible.
Oh, yeah, I know, but they do it on billions of people on a daily basis.
That's horrible.
And basically, it's just like, hey, we're going to replace all your limbs and organs basically with robot parts to make you better. For instance, there are these things called servo skulls. Mm-hmm. And basically, it's just like, hey, you were a criminal, or you're a really loyal person that we just want to honor you by basically just taking your skull, mm-hmm. taking your brain, taking all those components, and be like, okay, your job now is just to write down whatever I say. Here's a...
How is that in honoring someone?
Well, you do a good job serving the Emperor. Now you get to serve the Emperor for eternity, even after your death.
That doesn't sound like fun.
Well, to these people it is, because it's a religion to them.
So did these... The ones that are being honored, like, did they do it willingly, or were they forced into it?
It's a thing where, like, oh, I'm going to be a server skull when I die? Great! I get to keep working even in death.
Okay, so the people who weren't criminals, like, they wanted to do it. That's what I'm asking.
Yes.
Okay.
If you're a criminal, you don't have a choice.
Well, I figured. If you're a criminal, they're like... You fucked up, so here you go. This is what you get to do. Yeah,
and a lot of time you're basically you don't know you're a servitor after they make you one.
Okay.
Unless you've done something really bad, or the person making you into a servitor just was in a bad mood that day, mm-hmm. and then you're conscious.
Okay.
And have no control over yourself.
That's terrifying.
Yes. So, anyways, the Mechanicum takes over Mars, mm-hmm. and they're like, okay, we're going to look for these STCs.
Yeah.
Which are, like, the most valuable things in all of existence, basically.
Okay.
And we're going to go to Earth. So, a few people pop down to Earth, and it's just basically like, oh, there's a lot of stuff going on here.
Don't they call it Terra?
Yes, Terra. I'm just going to say Earth, but...
Okay, I'm just making sure.
Yeah.
I'm trying to see what I do and do not know as we go through this.
Well, Terra is just Latin for Earth.
Yeah, I know that.
Yeah. Speaking about that, in this universe, there's... Basically, the overall language is known as, like, High Gothic.
Okay.
The Mechanicum speak their own language, which is, I think, called Lingua Techna.
Okay.
Which is basically a combination of that and binary.
Okay.
And basically, the only way to properly understand it is to have, basically, robot parts in your body and all that.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. If you're speaking... technological language, essentially.
Yes. And basically also for them it's like, oh, I replaced another limb with a robot part. I am now more holy, basically. Because
so the closer they are to a robot, the better they are in
their eyes, yes. And because basically their religion is this. There's the machine god known as the Omnissiah, which basically created all life, mm-hmm. and the only purpose in life is to learn.
Okay.
Because the more you learn, the more value you have, and thus replacing your body parts with robot parts allows you to live longer, thus retain more knowledge.
Okay. That doesn't seem as creepy when it's put that way, but it's still fucking weird.
Yes, but I do have a picture for you for what they look like.
Oh my god.
And that's basically what they look like over time.
Ew. Why is he green?
That's just the color of, like, the screens and all that. Like, basically any screen in 40K has, like, a greenish tint to it, if that makes sense.
It's creepy.
Yeah. Right.
Looks like a weird demon thingy.
It's not a demon.
It looks like a demon.
To be fair, though, they are...
Like, that's the shit of nightmares.
To be fair, though, they are slightly based on Catholic religion, because there's 3 parts to their, like, god, mm-hmm. like, in the Catholic religion. There's the machine god, mm-hmm. the Omnissiah, and something called the motive force. And that's basically...
essentially like the Holy Trinity?
Yes. And basically for that, it's like, okay... because they don't fully understand technology. They really love it. They're the only ones in the Imperium that are allowed to work with it. Okay. No one else is allowed to work on technology or anything like that.
So, everybody else uses it, but they don't work on it.
Yeah, they don't work on it. Because basically the Mechanicum believes that, like, oh, in order to flip this light switch, you have to say a prayer first. In order to get the light switch to work. Mm-hmm. Because basically, if you don't do that, there's a chance it doesn't like you and it won't turn on.
Okay.
And basically, their rituals are like, okay, we have to turn this screw 4 times. We have to put in this barrel for this gun in at this, like, put in the barrel this far into the gun. Mm-hmm. It has to be this temperature. You have to say a prayer and wave incense over it. And basically...
Sounds like too much work.
Yes. That's how they build things.
Okay.
And it's worked so far, and there is speculation that even in something like a gun or things like that, there is a small little bit of AI in it.
Okay.
Which isn't really explained, and it doesn't go that much into it, but it's just basically a theory that, hey, everything has at least the dumbest AI in it, and they just don't understand that. So they put it up to like, oh, it's just because we believe that it works. And it's like, no, the AI was just like, hey, I'll work, you're nice to me, sort of thing like that.
Okay.
Because everyone's a moron. Because basically, for all the space travel that I'm going to talk about here in a minute, mm-hmm. Everything is basically post-apocalyptic.
Okay.
So anyways, after Mars takes over... Not after Mars takes over Mars. After Mechanicum takes over Mars, the Emperor comes in after he's unified Terra.
Okay.
Or Earth. Mm-hmm. And basically he's like, hey guys, how about you come work for me? If you don't, I'm going to conquer you. But it's just easier if we work together.
Okay.
So basically the Mechanicum's like, no. And then the Emperor's like, well, I'm your Omnissiah. So how about you give me a piece of technology that is really valuable to you, but there's no way you can ever fix it.
Okay.
And they basically give it to him, and he's just like, touch. And it starts working again.
Okay. Now
the Emperor is a psyker, so he's psychic and can basically, like, manipulate the warp and stuff.
Okay. And
some tech priests and things like that kind of understand that, and they're like, oh, he just used his psychic abilities. He didn't actually fix it or anything like that. Mm-hmm. He just made it work again with his powers.
Okay.
But a lot of them were like, oh yeah, he's the Omnissiah. He completely understands technology. Mm-hmm. Whatever he touches will just work.
Okay.
So basically, they formed an alliance because of that. Mm-hmm. And basically, over time, more and more people see him as the Omnissiah. Mm-hmm. But there's still a big group of them that are like, no.
Which is typical for any kind of religion. No, but not every single person believes every little thing.
Yes, and this causes a lot of problems later on.
I'm sure it does.
Alright, so basically, he does that, and basically for their agreement, he's like, I'll give you any STCs that we find. Mm-hmm. You will produce all of our material. I will only allow you guys to work on technology.
Okay, which is what they wanted anyways.
Yes. And in return, you have to produce all my stuff for what is called the Great Crusade. And it's basically the Emperor going out and reclaiming all of the old Earth worlds.
Oh, so he's basically trying to reunify everything after all the fighting and everything?
Yes, he's trying to reunify the galaxy.
Okay.
So basically he's like, you guys build all my stuff. Other than that, you guys get to keep your religion, because the religion is the worst thing ever.
Okay.
Which is funny because a lot of the terms for instance, the Great Crusade, there's a group later on that I'll talk to you about called the Inquisition.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of religious type terms associated with the stuff.
It's so many, which is really ironic. Basically, all 40K is like a Greek tragedy in that sense. Or actually, no, I'd say more like a Greek comedy. Mm-hmm. Because you know how like the old Greek comedies were like really like depressing and all that?
Yeah.
They weren't really comedies. It was just like, hey, look, what you wanted, the opposite happened.
Basically.
Because later on, the Emperor becomes known as the God Emperor of mankind.
Which is exactly what he did want.
Yes. For instance, he blew up basically an entire planet because they worshipped him as a god.
He kind of put himself in that position, though, by initially trying to trick them. What is it, Mechanicum?
Mechanicum, yes.
Yeah. I tried to trick the Mechanicum by saying he was an Omnissiah, so he put himself in that position.
Yes, well, he didn't directly say that. He was just like...
But he let them believe it.
Oh, yeah, he let them believe it.
So he put himself in that spot.
Yes, but that was also part of the treaty, is like, hey, I won't mess with your religion, but all other religions are gonna cease to exist. And basically, the Mechanicum of Mars was like, okay, that's fine. Fast forward a couple hundred years. Now, Horus, one of the Emperor's sons, is starting to rebel. And he's like, hey, Mechanicum, I have 2 STCs here. One is for making a new form of power armor. And the other one, I think, it wasn't like solar panels, but it was something that will produce a lot of power. And he's like, hey, I'll actually let you guys be fully autonomous. You can have all your Forge Worlds. You can reclaim your old empire. Because remember when they sent people out, they would basically start up Forge Worlds, but because travel took so long, it's basically like, hey, we're sending you out. If you can get back to us in the next 1,000 years, that'll be great. So basically, over this time, they're working on with the Emperor, since they can travel through the warp again. They can find all those old Forge Worlds that they sent people out to establish. Now, I think his name is Kelbor Hal, is the current fabricator of Mars. And basically that means he's the one in charge of all of the Mechanicum. He doesn't believe that the Emperor is the Omnissiah, and he really hates him. Like, he fully believes that, like, hey, as more time goes on, he keeps taking more and more things from us, and we're not really getting anything back anymore. And he saw that whole treaty that they had was basically like, hey, if you don't join us, we'll just kill you. So he basically feels like...
that's what it was.
Well, yeah, that basically is what it was, but still. So basically he was like, yeah, no, this wasn't a fair deal. How can we trust Horus? But then Horus sends his personal, like, tech priest. I forget his name. But basically it was his, like, guy that he spoke to for the Mechanicum. Like, basically like a little diplomat. Basically he comes back, it's like, oh, hey, I brought you these STCs, and I'll open something for you called the Noctis Labyrinth. Which was a giant complex of, like, vaults underneath Mars. That the Emperor was like, hey, part of our treaty, you can't open that. You can't go in there. I know there's a lot of STCs and technology in there. Don't open it. If you open it, it will be
he wanted it open when the whole point was that he wanted to give him STCs?
He never gave him. He was just like, if you open it, it will be a break of the treaty, and you will just be conquered. Do not open that vault. And he kept it so much of a secret that he wiped the memories of anyone who knew of, like, the vault's exact location. So basically, Horus is now working with the Chaos Gods, because the Emperor's whole goal is to, like, hey, we're gonna wipe out Chaos in the warp. With my Great Crusade. And by believing in religion, somewhat powers the Chaos Gods. Because it's like, hey, I pray that we win this battle. Well, you could just be having a simple prayer, but you could also be accidentally praying to someone known as Khorne, which is the chaos god of, like, war. And thus you empower him. So basically that was the Emperor's whole goal of, like, hey, stop believing in religion, even if it's me. So the Horus Heresy happens. 9 of the 18 Primarchs side with Horus.
What the heck are Primarchs?
They're the Emperor's sons. There were 20. One is known as the Forgotten, and the other is known... It was the Forgotten and... I think it was like the Forgotten and the Betrayed or something like that. But basically 2 of them, no one knows what happened. Everyone had their memories wiped of them too. It's a crime to even speak their names. So, as just like in the books, forget they even exist. So, Horus, who was the War Master who was in charge of all the other Primarchs, basically rebels against the Emperor. Is like, hey, I'm going to be Emperor now. I'm going to be in charge. So basically, they all start rebelling. They get Kelbor Hal, the leader of the Mechanicum, to rebel as well. And basically, this starts what's known as the Schism of Mars, where it's basically half the Mechanicum goes with the Emperor, the other half goes with Horus.
So war.
Yes. And what's funny enough is before the Civil War is even finished, the Mechanicum is just instantly like, we are now known as the Dark Mechanicum. It's like, oh, how can you make yourself sound more evil? Like, you just called yourself the dark version of what you originally were, while letting the loyalists be like, oh yeah, no, we're just the Mechanicum. And it's just like, it's basically like the Nazis going like, oh yes, I will wear this arm patch and march all these people into these camps. We're the good guys, though. And it's like, it's obvious. You can't honestly believe that, can you? Like, what the fuck? So basically, the Horus Heresy ends. Emperor gets put onto the Golden Throne. Everyone starts worshiping him as a god.
Isn't that when he's, like, all deteriorated?
Yes. Oh, I've shown you that picture?
Yeah.
Oh, I have.
No, that was in one of the videos you had me watch.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, I completely forgot I even showed you that. Yeah, so went from, like, basically this, like, 12-foot tall angelic figure to basically this crippled old man on this chair.
Yeah.
And Horus is dead. All the other traitors flee into what's known as the Eye of Terror, which is basically, if you've ever seen a map of the galaxy, like of our galaxy, do you know that big, like, glowing ball in the center?
Yeah.
That's basically known as, like, a warp rift, which is just an instant door to the warp. Like, you walk through it, you're in the warp now.
Okay.
So basically, they all hide out in the warp because they're all working with chaos.
Okay.
Some of them side with a certain chaos god, like, I believe it's, I forgot all the names, because there's 18 different legions. Remembering some of their names is hard. I think the Death Guard go with Nurgle, who's basically the god of, like, pestilence.
Okay.
And, like, decay and rot.
Ew.
I believe it's called the World Eaters, side with Khorne.
Okay.
No, not the Word Bearers. Anyways, 2 other legions side with 2 other chaos gods. Oh, the Thousand Sons side with Tzeentch, which is, like, the god of trickery and, like, mischief. Basically like Loki.
Yeah, I was supposed to
Loki,
say, it's their version of Loki.
Yeah, their version of Loki, but he's, like, all about intelligence, basically.
Okay.
And then I forget the legion that sides with Slaanesh, which is the chaos gods that the Eldar basically birthed into existence.
Okay.
And basically how a chaos god is formed is so much of one emotion, like, basically just creates them in the warp.
Okay.
Because when you die, your soul goes to the warp no matter what.
Okay.
And for a lot of people, die, soul goes to warp, you're going to get eaten by something and then cease to exist.
Lovely, that sounds horrible.
Yes.
Okay. Not much hope or anything there.
Well, there is hope in a sense, because it's speculated that the Emperor now is the 5th Chaos God.
Okay.
Because so many people believe in him as a god that it just becomes true.
Okay.
Also, there is this race called the Orcs, which are exactly how you think of. Like, just think of an orc from, like, Lord of the Rings is my best example for you. And basically, they're so stupid, but yet somehow have a lot of psychic powers.
Okay.
That, for instance, they think if they paint their vehicles red, they will drive faster. And thus, in reality, when they paint their cars red, they actually drive faster.
Okay.
Yes. Same thing. I believe that they paint their bombs yellow, they explode bigger. Because they just believe in it enough. Okay. I'm sorry, I'm on, like, a tangent.
You're fine.
Next time I'll make, like, bullet points, so I have a list of...
No, it's fine. I'm actually enjoying it.
Okay. Well, next time, though, just for everyone, like, listening, I'll just make bullet points and stick to those, because I noticed I rambled a whole bunch with this.
Okay.
So basically, back to the Mechanicum. Now that they've sided with Terra and all that, the Imperium is basically like, hey, you guys can stay. You're just now going to be a branch of the government.
Okay.
You still get to keep your religion and keep being the only ones to work on technology. And they're basically like, let's face it, you're the only ones who can. The rest of us are kind of stupid.
Yeah, like, no one else really knows enough about it to do anything about it.
Yes. So they're basically like, you get to keep that because you're also the only ones making it, really.
Yeah.
You get... Your Fabricator General now gets to have a seat on the council, basically.
Okay.
They're known, I think, as like the High Lords of Terra.
Okay.
And it's basically 5. One of them is the Fabricator General. The other one is... Basically, the other one is like the Grand Master of like all the Assassin Orders.
Okay.
It's basically their version of like the CIA, FBI.
Okay.
And then another one is basically the Lord Commander of like the Custodes, which are the Emperor's personal bodyguards, basically.
So they would only just stand over a corpse in a chair?
Oh, yes.
Sounds boring.
Well, because in their sadness of like, oh no, we let the Emperor die, in quotations, die.
Well, I know he's not dead, but he can't do anything. Like, it's not like...
He's basically in a coma.
Okay.
And he's put on the Golden Throne to both keep him alive and to keep what's known as the Astronomicon running.
Uh-huh.
Which it's theorized that the Mechanicus is slowly killing the Emperor by letting what's known as the Golden Throne fall apart.
Okay.
But that's just like a theory. Mm-hmm. But basically with the Astronomicon, it's basically like when you go into the warp, it's like, okay, how do you travel through something that has no form?
Okay.
And basically the Astronomicon is like a lighthouse. It's like,
okay.
Hey, I see that lighthouse. If it's over there, that means my destination is over here somewhere.
Okay.
And that's basically how it works.
Okay.
So when no one is sitting in it, you don't have that lighthouse, and thus traveling through the warp becomes nearly impossible.
Okay.
It's
that
like,
makes sense.
shit. How do we travel an ocean with no map or compass?
Okay, that makes sense.
And that's basically how it is.
Okay.
So basically, they run all these things now, and they've more or less just, like I said, become a lesser role, which is why they're no longer known as the Mechanicum, and now they're known as the Adeptus Mechanicus.
Okay.
Like the Adeptus Astartes, the Adeptus Sororitas, which are basically like an all-female group that basically just worship the Emperor.
Okay.
And they work for something known as the Ecclesiarchy, which is basically the church of the Emperor, and basically think of them as like the Catholic Church with the Pope and all that.
Okay.
And basically there's a rule with the Ecclesiarchy, like no man can work for them. And the Ecclesiarchy was like, well, we have women, so loophole.
So is it like nuns, basically?
A meme, well, like a meme name for them is known as Nuns with Guns.
Okay.
And that's basically what they're known as. I'll go more into detail with them later, but it is funny.
Okay.
So basically, here, wait, let me pull, if you have any questions for me, ask, but I'm going to pull up, like, what their tenets are for their religion.
I don't even know what to ask, because there's just so much information.
Yeah. It's been, like, 3 years since I've been learning about Warhammer, and there's still so much I don't know.
Jeez.
I told you, I counted the books. There's, like, 300 plus books on this.
Wow. Is there still more coming out, or
Yeah.
is that it?
No. They make, like, 10 a year.
Dang.
The company that makes
so like more than one person writes them?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, no, babe. One person wrote billions of pages.
Well, they're not like super long, are they?
Oh, some of them are very long.
Oh, okay. I thought they were kind of just short little...
No. For instance, I think the Horus Heresy is like... I mainly listen to them on Audible, but the one I was reading before this, which is just how Mechanicum, which is part of the Horus Heresy series.
Okay.
It's basically 12-hour... It's a 12-hour long audiobook.
Jesus.
Which is about as long as the Lord of the Rings book.
Yeah, that's long.
Yeah, and that's one book.
God.
So basically, I'm going to read to you their tenets and then their warnings.
Okay.
So first, the mysteries. 1. Life is directed motion. 2. The spirit is the spark of life. Sentience is the ability to learn the value of knowledge. Intelligence... Yeah, wait. I lost my place. Intelligence is the understanding of knowledge.
Okay.
Sentience is the basest form of intellect. So basically for them, like, oh, congratulations, you're sentient. Mm-hmm. You're bottom of the barrel then.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Alright. Understanding is the true path to comprehension. Comprehension is the key to all things. The Omnissiah knows all, comprehends all. And that also brings me, like, for instance, when they discover alien technology, it's like, oh, we have to destroy this to release its machine spirit. Because it is trapped and corrupt. Because it's not human technology.
So they're basically saying the only good technology is human technology.
Yes, everyone in 40k is racist. I mean, I'm just going to put that out there.
Lovely.
Except for the Tau. But I'll explain them later. They more or less just mind control everyone.
Okay.
So it's like, everyone's great because we can control you.
Well, yeah.
Alright, now I'm going to read you their warnings. And just for your information, the mysteries and the warnings are basically copied off, like, the 10 Commandments, basically.
Okay.
So the warnings. The alien mechanism is a perversion of the true path. The soul is the conscience of sentience. A soul can be bestowed only by the Omnissiah. The soulless sentience is the enemy of all life. So basically it's like AI or just machines that think on their own is the worst thing ever.
Okay.
And that brings me... There's a race called the Necrons, which are... I want to say they're the oldest race.
Okay.
And they've been around for like billions of years. And they have a really sad story, but basically their minds got transferred into bodies of robots.
Okay.
Would you think the Mechanicum is like, oh, they're nothing but machine, they're wonderful? No, because they're basically just so dumbed down by, like, the technology they went through and having their souls actually taken out of their bodies. That's just, no, it's no better than an AI, basically.
Well, that's kind of shitty.
Oh, yeah, it is shitty. When I go into them, you will feel so bad. However, they are the most powerful because they literally took their gods and made them into weapons.
Jesus.
Their gods are also known as, like, star vampires. And they're these ethereal things that just eat stars.
Nice.
Yes. Alright, where was I before? Here it is. The knowledge of the ancients stands beyond question. So the humans that had the, like, black hole grenades and time travel shooty guns.
Yeah.
Their knowledge is the best.
Shooty guns.
Yeah, they're shooty guns.
Yeah,
The guns that go bang, the shooty ones.
lovely.
Alright. The machine spirit guards the knowledge of the ancients, which is, why I told you, like, oh, everything has a machine spirit.
Yeah.
Which is theorized to just be dumb AI.
Yeah.
And the last one is, flesh is feeble, but ritual honors the machine spirit. To break with the ritual
Did you
is...
say that before?
You did?
The whole flesh is feeble
Yes.
thing.
Yeah, basically it's like, for instance, I think the Fabricator General, the one who was in charge during and before the Horus Heresy.
Yeah.
I think it was, in the book I was reading, it was like he's 80% machine, and basically he looks down on even the other tech priests, because he's like, oh, you still have a human face? You're pathetic. Like, get out of here. Like, the only thing that matters is your knowledge. And basically he goes into, like, if I can become more machine, I will. Like, we just need better technology for me to do it, basically. And mind you, these people live for thousands of years.
It's creepy.
It's not creepy, it's great. They're my favorite faction.
Okay, wouldn't want you to become 80% machine.
Oh, that'd be wonderful.
No!
No, if I could still look human, but just have, like, all robot parts, that'd be so great. I would love that.
It would freak me out.
And then their last one.
Yeah, my husband is 80% robot. No big deal. No thank you.
It's great.
Yeah.
And basically the last one is to break with ritual is to break with faith, which you actually often hear a lot with, like, other religions, like, to break with faith is, like, to break with God. Like, I think you've heard that quote somewhere before.
I'm sure I have.
Yeah, but basically that's where that comes from.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically that's, like, the most basic form of the Mechanicus that I can tell you about. One more thing, though, with the STCs. How valuable, not in terms of monetary, because this is a world where planets are literally destroyed on a whim. How valuable do you think even a fragment of an STC is?
Well, based on how much you've talked about, like, knowledge of technology, like, it's probably the most important thing.
Yes. For example, I think they're just like scavengers found in STC for better combat knives that were slightly better than the ones the Mechanicum already had. And they're like, okay, both of you get to rule over your own planets now.
Just because they found it?
Yeah, just because they found it, and they turned it over to the Mechanicum, and the Mechanicum was like, great, these combat knives do 1% more damage. You each get a planet.
Jeez.
Yep, you get to rule over it, do whatever you want with it, as long as you pay your taxes.
Okay.
Yep, and that's basically all there is to know on the lowest form about the Mechanicum.
I love how you say it's basic, and
yep, basic.
Was a shit ton of information.
I didn't go into Knights, Titans, Belisarius Cole, which is a tech priest that I will get into later when I talk about the Primaris.
How long would it take to actually get through all of this?
To get through all of the, like, how much? Like, to get through the basics of everything? Or
yes.
To get through the base, because let's see, each video, I'm gonna do a video each on all the Primarchs. So there's 18. There's the War in Heaven, which I would say would be about 2 videos. There's the Horus Heresy. There's the 2 Lost Primarchs, which I'll just tell you the lowest amount of knowledge that we would know on them, which would literally take like 5 minutes.
Okay.
The next one we're doing is the Emperor. I can do a whole video on Terra. I can tell you about Hive cities. I can tell you about all the chapters for each legion, because after the Horus Heresy, the legions got broken up into chapters, and there's hundreds of those. Basically, if I really wanted to squeeze the life out of all the Warhammer lore I can think of, we can literally do this for like the next 5-10 years if I wanted to. But I just wanted to...
And you just failed to mention that this is what I was getting myself into before we started.
Yes, I did. But don't worry, I'm just going to go through the...
Why? Just so that I couldn't be like, yeah, no, thank you, because now I'm already in it.
Yeah, now you're already in it.
Thank you.
You're also my wife, so it's not like you can leave.
I can just not sit here.
I'll make you. I'll tie you to the chair. How about that?
No.
I love you.
Oh,
Alright, so basically, it'll probably take like a year for me to get through the basics of everything.
Okay.
But in
not horrible, but the whole 5 to 10 years, that's a bit much.
Yes, at some point though, I'm going to start telling you more about the SCP stuff that I read.
Okay.
The little scary stories that like me and Isaiah tell you about.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I do want to get into those, and those are actually like 5-10 minute long things.
Okay.
But for now, I just want to stick with 40k, just because it'll take too long if I start throwing in other stuff on top of it.
And I'm gonna get confused. If you jump from different things, I'm gonna get super confused.
Yeah, so before I end, did you have any last minute questions? Like things you need to know?
No, I mean, I'll probably start having more questions if we get into it. But right now, I can't think of anything.
Yeah, the next one is the Emperor, which, like I said, starts off great. It's like the Emperor's the best, but then instantly becomes like, oh, you poor man. Oh, you're such an asshole, and it just costs you everything, basically.
Basically what happens to most people who come into any kind of power.
Well, yeah, but he didn't go mad with power. It was just one of those things where it's like, oh, if only you trusted your own sons more. And also just murdered some others. But...
Wonderful.
No, some of them just should have died right away. For instance, Angron.
Don't get into it. That's a whole other video.
I won't. I already rambled too much. This should have been half as long as it took.
Well, it was fun.
Yeah. Alright, so is there anything you want to say before I turn it off?
No, I don't think so.
Alrighty, that's it then.
Alright.